Welcome to this evening's Monday Motivation. Monday Motivation is all about speaking to somebody who's got a remarkable story to tell, one that's maybe a little bit different, a little bit out there. Doesn't have to be a running related story, but it's something that's a little bit interesting. It's maybe a little bit quirky, but it's there to provide a little bit of motivation and give you a couple of takeaways really that you can put maybe into your everyday life or your training, whatever it is, and leave you feeling with a little bit of a smile on your face, but also feeling really motivated and ready to crack on with the rest of the week. So this evening we've got a remarkable guy, Richard Thoday. He is a world record holder. I'll give you a little introduction about him, but it's incredible what he's managed to do. And Richard's currently the world record holder for the fastest person cycling Land's End to John O'Groats on a penny farthing. So welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Rich.
No problem at all. So I'm not going to say too much more about it. I'll let you say it because it's you're far better at explaining the record and what you've done than I am. But first of all, I want to ask you, how did you get into penny farthings and why? Why penny farthings? Why not a normal bike?
Well, I've ridden a normal bike since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've always had bikes around and like riding. I came to racing quite late on in life compared with most racing cyclists. Really an attempt to get fit. Mid-late 30s, really unfit, smoking too much, drinking quite a lot, classics.
Yeah.
And I acquired a bike through work. I'd not had one for a little while. I acquired a bike through work by accident and just started time trialing. I have no idea why, because I wasn't competitive at all at that stage in life. I'd never been a competitive sports person. And my family thought I'd lost the plot completely. But within 2 weeks, I packed up smoking. Winner, you can't race. Yeah. You can't race bikes and smoke, can you? It's not compatible. So
no, it's hard work.
So that was kind of a real breakthrough for me. I just got totally absorbed in time trialing, and started riding a fixed gear bike. I mean, if those out there, if they're not cyclists, they might not know what a fixed gear bike is. It's like the bikes that are out on the track, indoor track. So no gears.
Yeah.
Very, very kind of committed sort of riding, but it's very pure cycling. Have you ridden? Oh, well, you've ridden the penny farthing, so you understand.
I've ridden the penny farthing. Yeah, so I'm used to. Well, I know what one of those is all about. Yeah.
So I had a few years of racing, doing bits and bobs, and then just kind of got a little bit bored. And then I heard about this race which happens up in Knutsford in Cheshire, and it only happens once every 10 years. The Great Race. It's a race of penny farthings, and riders come from all over the world. And I was trawling the forums late one night, and I saw an entry form for it. And I thought, right, do that. That's different. So I entered, and then realised I'd never ridden a penny farthing.
Did you have a penny farthing at this point?
I didn't have one at that time. No. I just entered because I thought this has got to be done. If I don't do it now, 10 years on, crikey, I'll be like 50 something. But way too old, so just have a go. So I kind of asked around and found one to borrow. A lovely old original Victorian thing. Went to this race, and it was genuinely going to be a one-off. I turned up virtually unable to ride this bike and came just about last, but just had such a good time. Thousands of people there watching. Made some really good friends that day. And I went away thinking, right, I want some more of this. This is good. So I came home and I got some bits and bobs and found a wheel from somewhere and built one myself. And
you built one yourself? You built your own penny farthing?
Yeah, the first one I just built. I mean, I was a designer and I had access to a workshop, so...
Okay.
It's they're pretty basic bikes. There's not that much to them. If you've got the rim, and you machine a hub up, then it's just some bits of vent tubing and old pair of forks from a kid's bike and a little Brompton front wheel for the back end, and just lash it together.
I don't think I trust my engineering skills to make that work or to last 100 yards, let alone several miles on a ride.
Well, as I say, I was a designer, so I kind of, I knew how to make things. So I thought, right, I'm going to make a bike that's as easy to make as you can, penny farthing as easy as you can, that's safe to ride and will work. And it worked out really well. And the design actually got picked up by somebody who manufactures unicycles, Roger, who's up north. He runs unicycle.com.
So I bought my penny farthing off Roger.
So that design of your bike my first lash up was a prototype of that bike. That was the inspiration.
Well, I can say it's a very good bike, so well designed.
It doesn't try to be a copy of a Victorian Penny Farthing. It's in essence the same, isn't it, as you know? But
yeah.
It doesn't try to look like an original bike. There's no attempt to kind of conceal that. So it's just like a modern take on a Penny Farthing. Yeah. Still, in essence, the same. They're weighed the same. They're made of steel. Distinct lack of gears and brakes, and
it's still incredibly difficult to ride uphill.
Yeah, that's right.
Downhill, for that matter.
But years before I entered this race, I'd been involved with 2 attempts at Land's End to John and Groats on modern bikes. One was running a support crew for a very good friend, Chris Hopkinson, who later was the first bloke to ride Race Across America, first English rider to complete Race Across America, smashing work. He had to go solo, so I ran a support crew for him, and that failed. And then the 2 of us had to go at the tandem end-to-end record, and that kind of failed halfway as well for various reasons. So I kind of got this thing about Land's End to John and Groats in the back of my mind, and having failed twice at it. But I'd heard in the process of doing that, I come across this mention of this Penny Farthing record, which had stood since 1886, and it just kind of lodged in the back of my mind, and like this little ticking time bomb waiting to explode.
so tell us a little bit more about that record, the 1886 record.
So the record was set 1886 by a 19-year-old GP Mills, who I find it odd that very few people have heard of him, because he was just an astonishing guy. He actually, the year before, he'd paced. At the time, they used to do paced records. Everything was done paced. So he'd helped another rider to attempt this record, and realised that he's actually got quite a good aptitude for long distance riding. Yeah. So 1886, before, I think it's the year that Carl Benz patented the internal combustion engine. So there's no cars on the road at the time. The roads were in a bit of a dilapidated state because a lot of long distance travel was moving over to railways, so roads were in a bit of a bad state. And riding Land's End to John and Groats was like a massive undertaking, and a real big kind of adventure. And these are kind of legendary guys, you know, breaking new ground.
And so at 19 as well, you know, so
19, and so I was very curious about this record. I know it was documented by you know, official observers at the time, the cyclist kind of union at the time. So it definitely happened. But when you think about it, in that era, the state of the roads and the state of what we understand of sports training, nutrition, clothing, you know, support crews, timekeeping, navigation, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
Absolutely.
You know, how did this guy do this? You know, and what would it feel like to try and do it now and compare yourself with that? How would we match up against this guy? And the more I thought about it, the more I just couldn't let go of this idea of, you know, what did he go through, and what are the differences between then and now? The differences are just staggering. I mean, some of the differences make it a lot easier. I think the major one, and 1 or 2 people kind of pointed the finger at me and said, you can't say you've broken this record because the roads are so different. You've got tarmac to ride on, and he rode pre-tarmac. Although the roads, they were in a bit of a bad state, but roads were still, you know, they worked at keeping them in a reasonable condition. So that was the major thing that I had over him, I suppose.
But then he didn't have to navigate traffic, did he? Penny Farthing of a city is not easy.
No, because you had to go at this record, what, 2 years before me?
2017 I had to go at it. And obviously the first time I'd ever really ridden a Penny Farthing, so I'm daft as a box of frogs. But
we know that.
I had to go in it, and it was incredibly hard. You know, I got halfway, and that was it. I ended up collapsed on the side of the road. You know, I was absolutely exhausted. It's going through towns and cities during rush hour that you think up, down, up, down, up, down, dodging cars on something that's got no brakes. You're 8 foot high in the air. It's quite scary. It's quite hard work.
Yeah, I mean, forget the physical side of it. The mental side of it, you have to, as you're now having ridden it through traffic, you've got to stay ultra switched on all the time, because the slightest little thing that gets in your way, that can have you over the front of the bike from quite a height, and that could be game over. You know, broken collarbone.
Yeah, well, you're falling a long, long way, aren't you? You know, you're falling 8 feet off the ground or whatever.
Have you fallen? Have you taken a head? Have you been over the front of yours?
No, no. I'm assuming that you have by what you're about to say.
Yeah, I have a few times. I try not to. It's not good. This race I entered in nuts for this very first, kind of proper ride on the bike. It's on YouTube somewhere. We were 2 laps into this race, and it was a chaotic race because there was a range of, from the very best in the world riding flat out to numpties like me getting in the way. And there was a crash happened just behind me in the second lap, and the guy broke his wrists. Because you're sat on the top of this thing, as you know, on the point of balance. If anything goes wrong, you tend to go over the front, and the handlebars are in the way of you, so you go down head first. So it's either broken wrists or elbows or collarbones, or it's something spinal like neck, back, or that sort of thing. So
you are putting me off getting back on mine, I've got to be honest.
Well, they're lovely, genuinely lovely bikes to ride. The kind of flow of them is lovely. The views are nice. Motor traffic gives you loads of space because they're not quite sure if you're safe or not. So they are nice to ride, but you got to treat them with respect because they did kill a lot of people in the heyday. So accidents are always horrible. And that was a major worry for me with end to end. And I genuinely didn't know how I was going to respond to that sort of length of riding and how sleep deprived and tired I would get, and therefore what the knock-ons might be if you lose your focus and then you have a crash. I had a crash when I was training for it, really early spring. So it was a lovely day to be out for a long ride, riding back over the tops, almost home. Sun was just going down over the horizon. It's just starting to get real cold. And I've been testing out a lot of kit on the bike because you get a lot of vibration on the Penny Farthing. Solid tyres and no suspension at all. So you get a lot of vibration and things kind of break and wear out. So I did a lot of destructive testing of different things that I might use. And I had an extension on the handlebars to hold lights and navigation and water bottle and bits and bobs. And this kind of extension pole, which I was trying out, it just suddenly fell off the bracket and went into the front wheel, just swung off on a cable into the front wheel, locked the front wheel instantly over the handlebars. And I broke a couple of ribs and fractured my wrist. And that was just a walk. I'd actually slowed down. I'd turned off the side on the flat to watch the sun go down. Had I not done that, I'd have been barreling downhill at 30 miles an hour.
Very lucky then, really.
I was extremely lucky, and I was quite shaken up at the time. It did hurt, as I say. I did have some injuries.
And you ride your Penny Farthing clipped in as well, don't you? Your feet
and that,
into pedals.
Majority of riders ride with flat pedals. Although even back in the heyday, I found illustrations of and photographs of bikes where they had a sort of rudimentary toe clip and even little blocks of wood on the bottom of the shoe to kind of mesh in with the pedal. So they were kind of smart. Even in the Victorian era, they were trying a lot of ideas. They were thinking about an early version of a clip-in pedal. So they did have that sort of resistance. But I had a couple of close calls where I've had feet slip off flat pedals when you're spinning fast and you can't freewheel on them. And if you lose your foot off the pedal, it can throw your balance. And I've seen somebody crash very badly because of that happening on a corner. So I tried clip-ins for safety more than anything. And they help a lot. And a few other riders are using that as well now.
It makes a big difference when you're trying to, because you don't just push, you get the pull as well, don't you, when you clip?
That's right. So particularly up hills or accelerations. So if you're in traffic, like you're saying in towns and cities, it's quite difficult. And if you can accelerate that bit quicker, it can help in different situations.
Absolutely.
But to put it in perspective, what a Penny Farthing is like effort-wise, it's about twice as hard, I reckon, as a modern bike. Somebody did some testing recently down at the velodrome down at Derby. There's some guys hanging out the hour record, and they had some kind of quite smart technology that somebody was trying at the time to measure the drag coefficients and what have you. And they came to the conclusion it's about twice the effort of a modern bike at speed.
So that makes your current world record even more astonishing, because tell us a little bit more about the actual facts and figures of your record and what you beat, and the record from original as well, because we've not said what.
We've not said what it was, have we? Yeah. No. Everybody have a guess now before we tell you.
I don't think they'll guess, not unless they've heard me talk about it anyway.
Well, they might have done, yeah. So we're talking 1886, Land's End to John Groats. I don't know what mileage he actually did. There's no record of that, sadly, and his route would have been a little bit different, but basically the same. One or two bridges weren't there, so they'd have had to use ferries or route around. But he did it in a remarkable 5 days, 1 hour 45 minutes.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
It's astonishing, which is why it wouldn't let go in the back of my head. It's why it's that ticking time bomb thinking. And I know he did it, and I couldn't understand how he could have done it. And in the end, you know, there's only one way to find out, and that's to go and have a go. And I've been riding the Penny Farthing for several years at this point. I've sort of been time trialing on it, and been touring on it, and commuting on it, and just trying to be as good as I could at riding it. And I thought, well, let's find out. So the kind of fateful day, talking to my wife, and I'd ummed and ahed for a long, long time about whether I go or not, secretly, you know, not confessing to anybody. And then it's you having a go at it. Maybe they think, oh no, somebody else is having a go at it. That's it.
And when you see me fail at it, you think, well, if he can have a go at it, and he's never sat on one before, surely I can have a go. I bet that was what was going through your head.
What was going through my head watching your track, you know, watching your updates on Facebook. I said, come on, I'm right behind you. This is awesome. Somebody's at last having a go at it. Good on you. But I kind of hope that you don't. No. I looked at your schedule afterwards and kind of thought it through about what you planned to do and how it ended up.
Yeah.
And then that sat down and thought, yeah, okay, what average speed would you need? Realistically, how much rest would you need? And I went out and did a little test ride, and went out and set out 6 o'clock one night and rode right through the night, did 12 hours. See how far, just up and down the main road near me, you know, sort of 25, 30 mile circuit, and came home, went to bed for 3 or 4 hours, and then got up and tried to do it again. Because, you know, I don't normally do back-to-back riding like that. I'm a very average, you know, club rider, nothing special. And that seemed okay. So we wrote a schedule out. I thought, right, okay, let's commit to it. Let's have a go and see what happens. And then spent 10, 12 months of this thing just taking over my life gradually. I genuinely thought, this isn't going to be hard. I know physically it's going to be hard. You know, it's a massive thing to. But in terms of logistics, you know, I'll get some bloke in a van with some food in the back and 1 or 2 spares, and we'll just go down to Land's End and set off. And then bit by bit, you find that you're kind of being drawn deeper and deeper into it. And the more committed you become to it, and the more people that start to join in and lend a hand, the more you think, actually, I've really got to do this now. Yeah. And, you know, after 4 or 5 months, there were so many people starting to get involved in terms of proper big support group and genuinely don't want us to fail now. And in the end, after 10 months, I like to think we've thought about absolutely every little thing that could go wrong or could let me down, you know, and trying to tick that box. And we got a sponsor who covered the financial costs of it. And once you've got a big support group, multi-vehicles, it starts to, you know, get a little bit more than that, you know. I mean, I've done it anyway, but, you know.
It's serious then, isn't it?
Yeah, nice to have a sponsor to cover it for us, but then that becomes more serious. You've got a commitment to them, and we're raising money for charity, and I want to do that justice. And quite, you know, a support group are all personal friends who are giving up their free time, their holidays, and what have you. And then they're deeply getting. And I suddenly got to this point one day. You know that cartoon image of somebody rolling down a hill in a snowball, and their kind of arms and legs sticking out, and their kind of snowballs getting bigger and bigger, and they're completely out of control. That was me.
I know how you feel. I know exactly how you feel. So you started off in Land's End. Talk us through a little bit about the specifics of your challenge. So, you know, the hardest bits, the biggest challenges within the challenge that you had.
I think the biggest challenges were kind of, I mean, there are obvious kind of physical challenges, like there are some big hills on the route, and there are some scarily busy roads on the route. And the first day is the A30 up through Devon and Cornwall, and I used the fastest route possible, which is the route they use for modern record breaking, and it takes on every sort of road condition that you can find in Britain. So the A30 to Devon and Cornwall, it's motorway speed traffic, a single carriageway, and a big roller coaster, and it's scary, isn't it? It's really scary. When you've got big traffic whistling past your elbow at 80 miles an hour, and you're trucking up a hill at 6 miles an hour. It's
a very, very small, hard shoulder, isn't there? That's about a foot or so wide, and that's about
so and then town, you know, big town and you know, outskirts of city traffic is nasty. Navigation's quite tough, and there are some big hills later on. So physical challenges are tough, but the things that I was more worried about were the kind of psychological challenges of it, because having tried land centre John Goat's Life tandem before and stopped halfway, and that was my call because it wasn't going wrong. But a lot of that was kind of self-sabotage, for want of a better expression, because it wasn't going the way I'd expected it to, and I wasn't getting on with the support crew, which somebody else organised, and it was more of a psychological failure than a physical failure. And within like 2 days afterwards, I basically regretted that decision, but at the time it was very real to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not a quitter, you know, but things take over. When things get tough, there's another bit of processing in your mind, which can, you know, there's a book called The Chimp Paradox. I don't know if you read it. Steve Peters wrote it. Brilliant piece of thinking. Some of the Olympic cyclists have used him to help them through this issue. And somebody from that company came and helped me, Tim Buckle, who's a fab guy, really good coach. And he had quite a few sessions with me trying to get to the bottom of why I wanted to do this. What was the real personal driver to it? And that's really, really key, because if you don't know why you're doing it, and when he first asked me, I could have come up with like half a dozen glib answers to that, why you're doing it. I could have reeled them off. And I was doing it to people. Not the genuine reason, though. And if you don't genuinely know why, when it gets really tough, that's when the chimp comes out, starts to get a bit arsey about things, and kind of that's when you start kicking off and shouting at support crew and saying you want to go home. Actually, it's a lot easier to go home at a certain point and go and sit on the settee and watch a film and drink tea than it is to keep going with this tough thing. And I knew that was going to happen, so we talked quite a lot about it, and then in the end we got down to the kind of essence of why I wanted to do it. And it was like a breakthrough moment for me. Once we'd figured that out and I knew what it was all about, then we could go through the process of thinking, right, okay, what's my chimp going to tell me when it gets hard? What are the bits that are going to get really hard? Like, yes, at some point, my rear end is going to get really, really sore, because you can't get out of the saddle on Penny Farthing. You know what it feels like. Yeah, and by halfway through, I mean, I kind of hid it from the support crew in the end. By the end, how bad my rear end was, and it was bleeding. It was bad. It was a really bad state. Exceedingly painful. But we prepped for that. You know, okay, your rear end's going to hurt. Is it going to kill you? No. Tell your chimp. Let your chimp know all about it. When he gets out of the cage and starts screaming and shouting about how awful life is and your back end's hurting, just remind him, we talked about this and it's not going to kill you. You know it's going to happen. So just accept it. Keep going, you know, you get to the end. So we talked through quite a lot of things. And we had a session with he worked with the support crew as well to prep them for it. Because they've never done anything like this before. They have no idea how tired they're going to get on this. We're not talking about the timescale of this, but I knew they were going to become knackered, because I've done this. I've been in support crew for a massive event, trying to do end to end, and you get sleep deprived and you start to think irrationally and falling out with your friends. And they were my friends, and these are married couples as well. You know, the potential for it's quite real. So I wanted them to be prepared for it. So they went through this process of thinking, what are the worst things that can happen, and how are you going to deal with it, and be reasonable to each other. You know, to get to tick the box at the end and complete the mission. So that was all, you know, wonderful preparation. And we did get those moments. We got the, you know, I did have a moment when my chimp was climbing out the cage and he was going to have a rant, you know. And it was something silly, because that's what happens.
Well, it's what happens when you're tired, you're hungry, you're in pain. All of those things, they build up and build up and build up and get to the point where, like you say, it's something tiny just becomes like your universe is exploding, and it's the most
completely out of proportion. And I know the support crew went through it as well. I know there were things going wrong at the end of day two, but I just kind of blocked that out and I let them deal with it, because I know that they were prepared. Because they've been through this process, they could handle it. Just let them get on with it. But the timescale, modern end to end on a bike, they're doing it like within 2 days now. It's just staggering. And you can do it with support crew, kind of catnapping in a vehicle, and you just do it in one hit. You go. But we're talking like 5 days, and you can't do that to the support crew. It's just way too dangerous to expect them to go into this kind of sleep deprived zone and look after you, because we're stopping every hour. They've got to leapfrog me, get to a place every hour, prep food for me, check the bike, sort out once I've got back on the road again, pack up, leapfrog me, stop. So they've got virtually no time to do anything else. So in the end, we decided the best way to do it would be to have 2 support crews. So one does the first half of the day and sleeps later on. The other one does the second half of the day as a late get up, and that worked really well. But logistically more difficult.
Yeah.
But worked really well. So they were kind of able to look after themselves and stay fresh as well as look after me. So the days are like 16, 17 hours of riding.
Yeah.
It's
a long time to be sat on a bike with no suspension, no giving the tyres, and not being able to get off that seat. That is a long time.
Yeah.
Your backside hurt.
So originally we thought the schedule is like 170 miles a day for 5 days, and you get there. My original kind of average, I was ambitious. Originally, I wrote the schedule, I thought I can do really long days and like maybe 2 or 3 hours sleep. And do it with an average speed of 10 miles an hour. But then kind of gradually came to the realization that actually I'm like mid-50s. I'm not superhuman. I'm not so amazing athlete. You've got to be really realistic about these things. So they kind of upped the average speed expectations and increased the sleep.
Yeah.
We did think about your notion of riding through the night when traffic's quieter and sleeping during the day. And people sensibly eventually convinced me that there's no way that I'd be able to maintain my sleep pattern too far out, and it would just destroy me. And then I was
that was the issue that I had, and like I said to you before you did your challenge, that that was definitely the problem I had. Whilst my logical thought behind it, get out the way of the traffic, made sense in my brain, but you're trying to sleep when your body wants to be awake. And to keep yourself awake in the dark when all you want to do is sleep. So that was my downfall, undoubtedly. Yeah,
so that conversation with you was kind of clinched the deal with me, having talked to a sports psychologist. And in the end, we decided, right, the best thing to do is keep my sleep patterns as near to absolutely normal as possible. Try and get to bed at a very normal time, and then get up early. I mean, I don't like getting up early, but you can do it. It doesn't. It doesn't
for 5 days, you can manage it.
Of course you can, but if you can go to bed at a normal time, then your body's used to it. So again, the preparation, the things were kind of really, really important. So things like for several months, I used lavender spray in the bedroom when I was going to bed at night, quick squirt of it. And I got used to that smell, meaning go to sleep now. So we get out on the road in a strange van that you're not used to. You take your own pillow and have a quick squirt of the lavender spray, and you're like, oh, it's like you're at home in bed and you just go to sleep. It works the truth. So there was attention to that sort of detail makes a difference between getting your sleep and not getting your sleep, and then whether you can function when you wake up early in the morning. Then
absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about what your current record is then.
So the current record, in the end, we got there and reset the record at I'm trying to remember now. I've forgotten. 4 days, 11 hours, 52 minutes. So that's kind of half a day off the record.
Yeah, which makes that record even more astounding, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. The thing that I find the total headbender is that he did it repeatedly on 6 hours sleep.
Yeah.
5 days.
I also read that it was because cocaine was kind of societal norms. So he was basically wired on illegal substances. So he didn't need but obviously you couldn't do that these days.
I've tried not to sort of play on that too much. I mean, it's a conversation to be had, but I don't want to. It feels like I'm dissing the bloke for saying that. But yes, you're right.
Oh, no.
I mean, that year, 1886, it's funny. Looking at his record, it kind of sets a marker in time for me in history, and you start to kind of absorb other things and noticing. Coca-Cola was patented that year, and Coca-Cola, of course, was a cocaine that available. It was, like you say, societal norm. You could pop in the chemist and buy a cocaine tonic. I'll pick me up. But yeah, as you say, he was wired, so he could manage to do the whole thing with 6 hours sleep. I don't know what it felt like in his head. It must have been a strange place to be.
He must have been a bit of a mess afterwards, and I suppose that leads me on to something that we spoke about the other day, which is a really important thing for us to talk about. Because you had spoke to quite a lot of sports psychologists about your training and about the challenge itself. But one thing they talked to you about was the period of time after.
Yeah.
So, which I know that you...
It took me by... Yeah, so we did a lot of work before, and that was invaluable to do the record. I don't doubt I wouldn't have achieved that record without the preparation in advance and sorting my head out for the event itself and to go through all the training. And I had a little bit of a dip towards the end of training, and I know other people that I spoke to who were doing similar things. That's normal. And we got through the whole thing, and we got to the end, and it's like going off the edge of a cliff. And nobody had talked to me about what happens after a really, really big effort or a big attempt. And talking to people since then, in the last few months, I've realized a lot of people go through this. But I went through into a state of depression, and I'm not a depressive personality. I'm pretty upbeat, you know. I'm Mr. Positive most of the time. And I went into this big state of depression. I mean, to the point of, I mean, I didn't ride the bike for a year. Okay, people wouldn't ride very much, but I quit my job. You know, I handed my notes in at work. I was just sat doing nothing at home. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, I retracted that and did keep my job in the end. But at the time, I just didn't. The life just went very black for me. You know, I didn't want to go out and do anything.
Yeah.
And my wife that pointed out to me, she said, "You know, you're depressed." What do you mean? No idea. Couldn't see it from where I was, and it took quite a long time to kind of pull myself out of it. And looking back on it now, I think, well, why didn't? Yeah, if I can prepare for the thing itself and sort the psychology of it out, surely we could have addressed the afterwards bit as well. And I've talked to quite a few people who've been through it, and only one person that I've spoken to had prepared for that. And he had to go at North-South, you know, Trans-European record, and he didn't manage that. But he went on and he's done lots of other things since. He had lots, you know, kind of. He knew what was coming afterwards. He had other things to kind of lead him forwards in life. But for me, there's such a big thing that it was a one-off, you know, and there wasn't no what's next. There's no afterwards. And that's why I just sat in this kind of little strange place.
It's a very odd one because, like you say, nobody ever talks to you about it, and you don't expect it. You're not expecting to feel glum or down or fed up or anything like that after doing.
No, because I mean, there was a long period of people telling me how fantastic it was and what an amazing thing I'd done and how great it was. And you know, I went and did talks for local sports clubs and what have you, and because people were genuinely very interested and very supportive, and I appreciated all that. It was nice to be able to share it with people. But then I go home and just sit on my own and think, oh, yeah. And it's difficult to describe. I didn't know I was in that state. But I've talked to a lot of other people like Mark Beaumont, who did that amazing round the world in 80 days, 78 days, and Lee Tivis, who did Trans-European record, and you know, there's quite a long list of people I've spoken to. And as I was saying to you the other day, you know, I talked to a para athlete who experienced it after a big event to the point of self-harming, and we're talking like real nasty self-harming with a going to the bone, and that becomes life-threatening. You know, it's I think it's something people need to address a little bit more.
Absolutely, and I think that's the big takeaway, as well as experiencing what an amazing challenge that you achieved. I think it's looking at the other stuff that you didn't know was going to come, and nobody had pre-warned you about. All the experts hadn't mentioned it, but. We've got about 40% of our runners at the Bolton Marathon are going to be first-time marathon runners. They're going to be building up to this massive event that they've been training for 6 months. A lot of them, if not all of them, are going to experience what you've experienced post-event. So it's really good for them to be able to experience. So actually, it happens to everyone. This is what happens, but there's ways around it. You know, maybe having something to look forward to. Put in the diary, but I think the big thing is being prepared for the fact that you're gonna have this slump in your motivation, because everything's just geared towards that one period of time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the chimp training thing, the chimp preparation beforehand, and talking to the other side of you in the back of your head, and preparing them for it. And if you're prepared for these things and you know it's going to happen, you kind of you're forewarned, and it makes it easier. But yeah, having things to look forward to and other things to motivate you afterwards is really, really important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have a little thing for afterwards to draw you on, to make you want to kind of get back to running or cycling or whatever it is that you enjoy doing to keep you normal.
Yeah, superb. Yeah. Well, Richard, we're going to draw it to an end there. I suppose what we've got, I want to link to your YouTube video. There's a film of it. So if anyone wants to watch, it's a fascinating film. It's about 20 minutes long. It's brilliant. We'll put a link to it in the comments so you can go straight to it and just see firsthand exactly what Richard put himself through for the challenge. Can they still donate to children in need as well? Because we haven't actually mentioned that you raise money for children in need as well whilst you were doing it.
They can. I did have a Just Giving page set up for that. That's stopped now. But
obviously, people can still donate to children in need. But it's coming up as well.
Sorry.
With children in need coming up very shortly as well. Obviously, people can still
it is.
Children in
need.
So.
If anybody wants to stick another £1 in the coffers there, that's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, super.
There's one little thing I was pondering earlier today about the kind of things that were keeping me going during training, and there's just one that came back to my mind today, which I thought was invaluable to me when I was training. And it's a cyclist called Michael Hutchinson who had to go at the hour record, and he had this little mantra that everything you do in life will make you go faster or slower. When you're training for something like the marathon, all the little things you do in everyday life, like whether you have that third cup of coffee or not, or whether you eat a banana or a packet of Jaffa cakes, or what you do, or whether you put your feet up and watch a film, every decision you make is going to make you go faster, slower at the end of the day in that race. Tiny effects, some of them almost unmeasurable, but it's a kind of way of motivating, keeping you focused on your task. It's a nice little mantra.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very good to have something to go through your head and be thinking, right, it keeps you focused, doesn't it? Keeps you focused.
It does, yeah.
Superb. Well, Richard, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
We'll all see you out of a Penny Farthing in the near future.
We should have a ride together sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to dig mine out of the cupboard.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks,
well,
Richard.
Good luck to everybody with the marathon.
Superb. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.